This short story is called Stutta. I was going through some old stuff recently and came across the C90 cassette with this on it. I realised I'd recorded it 40 years ago in a friend's studio in the French Alps. It was something of a lucky little story for me. I got to read it live on a London radio station and it got me a job, short-lived, as resident writer for an Irish theatre in education company. The story still works for me, and I hope it works for any listeners. Thank you for listening, thanks for liking, and for subscribing. All the best, Tim. Stutta by Tim Orchard. All authors' rights reserved.
He should have guessed something. Ground floor flat and the front window unlocked. But Stutta, well, he ain't that clever. He ain't stupid and he ain't bad. Just he ain't so clever. Stutta, he robs people because he can't think of another way to live. And it's status, ain't it? You know, like in the areas he inhabits, stealing's better than holding down some shit-kicking job. And looking at it sideways, you can see his point of view. I mean, there ain't no way he could be anything anyway. The world ain't built like that. And why is he called Stutta? Well, think about it. Because of the way he talks, right? Stutta can't put more than 3 words together without hitting a letter that makes him stick like an old record. And if there's a T anywhere, that's it. He's lost. So what chance has he got? Anyway, even Stutta should have guessed something was wrong. Maybe he'd just started to get casual, believe what the papers say. You know, police stuff about burglary being the hardest to detect of crimes. And it is. And he couldn't have known, could he? Stutta just thought it was an easy play. Stutta never works far from home, and on this night he was down Tooting way, a road back of that big hospital. It was late, after pub time. Time enough, in fact, for most folks to be tucked up in their little beds. The street he knew was quiet. See, he'd done a couple of places down there a few months previous. The place he had his eye on was down one end, the cul-de-sac end. There was an overgrown privet hedge around the front garden and a quick escape alley at the back if things turned bad. He slipped in the garden up behind the hedge and waited a couple of minutes. No lights, noise or movements. So he went to the window. It was one of those sliding sash efforts. There's a lot about, and providing you got something slim to slip between the 2 frames to knock the catch away, well, you're laughing. Stutta didn't need anything because the catch was off, and when he tried it, it ran up so quiet and smooth, you'd think God had greased it. And he was in too, silent and smooth, with it shut behind him before you could take a good-sized breath. Now everybody's got something a little special about them. Well, that's how I see it anyway. Even someone like Stutta. You know, something which helps them get by in life. And what's special about Stutta is he can see in the dark. I mean really see in the dark. And in his trade, that's a very useful thing. You can lock Stutta in a pitch black room and within 2 minutes he'd place everything and be able to walk about as though he'd lived there all his life. And although it's never quite pitch dark in London, that's what he did. Stood until the room was all in focus. There wasn't much to see, and what there was tacky. A single bed set against one wall and empty. By the window at the head of the bed, a small cabinet with a lamp on it. In an alcove on the other side of the room there was a chest of drawers, and by the fireplace a tatty armchair. And a smell like long-lost farts. It was a woman's room because of the clothes, and she must have been a bit of a slob, because they were all over, on the chair, on the bed, on the floor. It didn't look promising, but since he was in, Stutta figured a few quid or a camera would be something. He went through the bedside cabinet first. There was nothing but tissues and Q-tips. The chest of drawers drew a blank too, just clothes and none too good at that. The only thing in the room which interested Stutta were the pills. Bottles and bottles, dozens of bottles in rows on top of the chest of drawers. He covered the lot pretty carefully to see if there was something a bit fast for himself, or anything worth selling. But nah, it was all prescription, you know, middle-aged women pills, tranquiliser, Librium, stuff like that. Altogether there was no money, no nothing worth stealing. Whoever lived there seemed worse off than himself, and he thought of leaving her a fiver and going home to bed. Then again, your job's your job, and he didn't like to leave it half undone. Besides, he knew the flats. They were small. Usually just 2 other rooms apart from the bedroom. 2 minutes' work. So quiet as Goldilocks, he slipped out of the room and into the hall and tried the door nearest to him. I mean, you have to be a bit careful even in a dump like that. No one wants to disturb a 16-stone navvy sleeping off his porter. The next room was worse than the bedroom. A tip. Just another single bed and a hard-backed chair. No carpet, no nothing. The ceiling was partly down and there was rubble all over the bed and the floor. On the seat of the chair were more containers of pills. Stutta didn't even bother to check. He was starting to feel spooked. And as he moved down the darkness of the hall to the last door, the smell he'd noticed when he entered was even stronger, and it was a smell he knew. Gas. As he shoved open the door into the kitchen, a wave of fumes hit him and made him gag with the rottenness that they feed into that natural gas stuff to make it safe, and he had to shut the door double quick before he was sick. Stutta stood there, hand on the door for a while, wondering what to do next. He's a thief, right? But something like that, well, it's different. He forgot he was a thief. He could see all the little flats in the street going boom, and all the people along with them. And he didn't know what was what, but he knew he had to do something. Maybe the stove had been left on, maybe there was a leak. Stutta had to find out. He pulled his jacket up over his nose and mouth and opened the door again. There was light falling into the kitchen from the flat above next door, and Stutta could see everything like daylight. The woman was lying on her side with her head on a pillow in the gas oven. Stutta had given up his role as thief. He did what anyone would do. He pushed his way through the fumes, dragged her out of the oven and into the hall. He rolled her onto her back and bent over her, ready to do anything. Stutta had never seen a dead person before, but it don't take a genius to recognise a corpse in the flesh. Saving a street while it slept is one thing, but dead bodies, well, there ain't a petty thief in the world that don't know dead bodies are bad news. Stutta ran. He was out that front door and down the street quick as that. But his conscience was stirred, you know. He didn't get far before the few thoughts he'd had in his role as saviour of the sleeping slowed him down and wouldn't let him run all the way home. And the gas was still on. This was a big moment for Stutta. His first ever public service act. People like him ain't often called upon to lay themselves on the line. And he didn't want to get nicked either. He knew what he was going to say. Sussed it all out as he walked down the Broadway looking for a telephone box that worked. Simple. There's a dead woman at such and such street. Hang up, go home, leave it to them, yeah? So, in he goes, 999. Which service do you require? Said the girl's voice. That threw him, but he rode it. Police. Simple. Keep it simple. And he was through. Yes, the voice said in his ear. Yes. And Stutta started. Ah! All gone in a great mess of teas. He dumped the receiver back in its cradle. No good. Stutta told me all this the next day. Well, really it was early in the morning after he'd gotten home and couldn't sleep. He came over and woke me. He was almost in tears with his newly discovered conscience. Like I said, Stutta ain't bad. It took a while to get it all out, and I had to stop myself hitting him more than once. All those teas, and it was a long story. I was interested, though, and kept my eyes on the local paper for the next few days, and sure enough, towards the end of the week, there it was. Not Stutta's gas disaster, but the dead woman. The girl next door, probably the one with the light on, had discovered the body. Seemed she'd heard some noise and come down to investigate. She'd found the front door open, the house full of gas and the body on the hall floor. The report said that she didn't die from gas but from an overdose of pills. The theory being that at the last moment she decided she didn't want to die and had been trying to make it out of the house for help. I don't know how they accounted for the front door. The saddest thing was, the girl who found her had been recovering from a nervous breakdown and had only been out of hospital a week. That dead woman sent her right back in. And Stutta? Well, he's still a thief.